Keir Starmer does the speech yesterday. I mean, it's all trailed in advance anyway. They rarely say anything that new in the speech because they trail it in advance. But I always say, I mean, people always say, oh, you're going to take the speech live. And I always say, no, I like my audience too much. Why do I want to bore you silly? We can tell you what the highlights are. I say highlights, but are they highlights? That's a big question or not. But anyway, it was the most doom-mongering misery fest I've heard for a very long time. I mean, this is a new Prime Minister with a massive majority. He can do what he wants. Yes, he's inherited a pretty bad financial stake right now. Yes, he has. But then he supported all the measures that would have led to that those financial problems. But talking about, basically, I mean, we're going to, you know, the broadest shoulders are going to have to suffer the burden. It's going to be a painful budget in October. The question is, how painful is it going to be? He said he's not going to raise income tax, national insurance or VAT, but those for working people, which is, by the way, most people in the country. But national insurance for employers likely to go up. That's literally a tax on giving people a job. Yep. That's going to be a great way of boosting employment and boosting the growth in the economy. Capital gains tax going up could be from 20% up to top rate for people who pay top rate tax, 45%. And that might sound good if you are, say, a buy-to-let landlord. But you know what those people are going to do? They're going to sell their property now, and then those properties aren't going to be available for anyone to rent. And guess what happens to rents then? Can you guess? They go up. Amazing, that, isn't it? And the very rich, you know what? You can try and tax the very rich as much as you want. Do you know what they do? They hide their money legally. They move their money legally. They don't even have to break the law. There are they move themselves. What do you make of all this?
Capital gains tax, raising it at the exact moment that you need more external investment in your economy is a dreadful idea. But the reason that I suspect they're doing it is purely an ideological one. It's so that they can turn around to their voters, to the unions, and say, look, we're hammering the rich. Look at all these fat cats, you know, making money off unearned wealth, is what they'll call it. But the reality is, as you've just sort of described, people will just stop investing. You know, the world's super rich will go, wow, that sucks, I don't want to go there, which is already happening.
There is an argument, though. There is an argument that somebody gets up for work every day and does, you know, some people do back-breaking work, and, you know, what they're paying tax.
We send a lot of people down mines these days. No, I thought we closed those. I thought
because Labour will bring them all back.
We're closing the steel mills. We're closing all the back-breaking.
There's still plenty. No, but you're going to put it. You're working all day. Why is someone sitting in their comfy conservatory all day while their shares are making money should pay a low rate of tax? I think a lot of people will question that. So what is the justification?
Well, because the money is being put to work. And actually, if you raise capital gains tax, because actually you're incentivising people then to not put money into the economy and to take that money out of the UK, if possible, you'll end up probably costing the taxpayer. That's the reality of the situation. You want it to be...
It might sound like a good idea, but...
Exactly, and even if it were to raise money, it would be a one-time thing. Well, the first year that you do it,
you get a load of money.
You get a load of money, and then
afterwards,
work
their way around
people have worked it out. And it's the same actually with VAT on private school fees. Actually, you get a one-off payment, and then afterwards you have to deal with the added pressure on the rest of the system. So
more people moving there. The people who are just struggling to make those fees, then move their kids into state
Well, this
schools.
is the thing. It never punishes the super rich, you know, because
they're not affected.
Exactly, they're not affected, and
they're not affected by inheritance tax either. None of them pay inheritance tax. It's all in trust funds.
Well, exactly. I mean, this is the thing. Very wealthy people are able to hire very wealthy, very clever lawyers to get around these things. They've seen this stuff coming. The ones that were already deeply embedded in this country. But actually, let's say hypothetically that Lord Emsworth or whatever has to sell his castle. Who's he going to sell it to? You know, what are we going to do? Chop it up and turn it into flats? Obviously not. You know, that's not actually how these things work.
So I don't know, put illegal migrants in it.
Well, probably yes, at great cost to the taxpayer. There is no benefit to basically robbing the rich of assets that you can't monetise. Ultimately, you know, what's the point of it coming into public hands? Goes to the National Trust. You then have to go around with the tin saying, "Please give us money to look after these things." And we have to remember, talking about the richest, those with the broadest shoulders, you know, carrying the burden. The richest 1% pay 33%, 34% of all the taxes in this country. So how much more do they have to pay?
And we know what happens when you do tax those people, the super wealthy, the ones who pay silly amounts of tax, millions in tax, is they do leave the country. People do leave. We saw that happen with France, when François Hollande became Prime Minister, and he put the President, and he put the taxes up to 70% for the highest earners. I mean, literally thousands of people just upped sticks. And
lots of them came here.
They can still go back to that country and spend plenty of time there, but they don't stay there for tax purposes. But I can understand why a lot of people get very angry and cross the rich. There's perception that rich people are getting away with it. let's bear in mind, those people are paying more tax than the rest of us.
Yeah.
They're just not willing to pay that much more when they can get away with moving to a lower tax economy, and they can do that because they've got their yachts and they've got their homes in multiple places, and where they choose to be resident is their choice. But this thing, is any of this even necessary? Because one of the things that Keir Starmer said was, look, this was all, he didn't have a choice. Tax is going to have to go up. It's going to be painful, but he doesn't have a choice. And we've had, key figures in the Tories saying, such as there are key figures in the Tories. I could say that. Saying, look, there's always, it is always a choice, because you can make a decision about which taxes you raise. You can make a decision about whether you borrow more. That doesn't pose other costs later on. Or make a decision about more cuts. There is no doubt at all in my mind that there are tens of billions of pounds of public spending that could easily be cut without anybody noticing.
I mean, the government in 2022 to 2023 lost more money in, I think it was universal credit fraud than it did to tax evasion and avoidance combined.
Yeah.
So when they're sitting there and saying,
they're organised
there is
gangs doing it.
There is so much money just being siphoned out of government coffers. And actually, is there any? Has he stood up and said, we're going to get, we're going to end fraud and things like that? People actually, are taking advantage of the system. No, he's talking about people with the broader shoulders because he thinks that plays particularly well. And I have to say, it's not a particularly healthy situation where your sort of default response is that everybody on the bottom rungs is all completely white and white. They're all fantastic. They're all working really hard, even though we know so many people are on out-of-work benefits. It's mind-boggling, and lots of them are also, creaming benefits that they don't deserve out of the system. And to then say, and it's all the rich's fault, and then you look at it and you go, oh, but hang on, they're paying, a third of the country's tax take. It sounds very good, but it's not actually economically sensible to do that. And this is where I really do get very angry about it, because to say it sounds good and it plays very well to people who are hard up against it, lots of people are hard up against it. Yes, we get that. But to say he doesn't have a choice, everything is a choice.
It's everything, exactly. That's what to govern is to choose. Yeah. But it's also very anti-aspiration, isn't it? I know people, it's very different. It's in America, people actually, they admire people who are self-made, who have, pulled them up from their bootstraps and come from nothing. In this country, people are snotty and snobby about that.
There's a jealousy about hard work and aspiration and achievement.
No, there's the posh people who don't like people who, the nouveau riche, and they're just horrible, nasty snobs. And then there are people who just, haven't been as successful, who go, oh, well, you must be a bad person because you've made a load of money. There are so many people who run brilliant businesses who've come up with a great idea, they've worked hard, they've built up a good business, they treat their employees well, they do shares to their employees, they do all the right stuff, and they're very rich, and they live here, they pay a load of tax here. I think we should be going, well done, thank you very much. I'm all in favour of, if you want to give those people awards and things, that's fine. I don't think they need them. They're already multimillionaires. But we are one of the few countries in the world where we are embarrassed by people being successful, making money. No, we're the same with academic achievement. This whole idea that you shouldn't celebrate academic achievement, okay, apart from someone gets their 3 A's, on A-level day. But not the whole Labour Party is opposed to grammar schools. Most of them send either they themselves previously had gone to a private school themselves, or okay, this lot more comprehensive educated for a big change. But a lot of them will deliberately move to the catchment area to get into a good school, or it's selection by the back door because they just don't have a lot of kids who are coming from the sink estates. They know exactly what they're doing. Tony Blair did it. The Tories have been doing it for years, pretending to send their kids to a local state school. Oh, give me a break. The school David Cameron and Michael Gove sent their kids to is not a bog standard comp like I went to. We have such an issue in this country, this sort of politics of envy, the politics of grievance, as opposed to going, hey, wow, you've done really well. Thanks very much for giving back. As you should do, required by law, we should share out. But maybe I could try and do a bit of that. Maybe I should take some inspiration from you. I need a bit of more politics of aspiration, politics of achievement, rather than the politics of envy, which is what we're getting.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get progress in any society if you don't have aspiration. And ultimately, this is a real problem, is that people want to know how it is that we're going to pay for social care, pay for the NHS. You do that via wealth. And if you don't create the wealth, well, how are you going to pay for it? It
doesn't matter how you can have a bigger share of a very, very tiny pie, or we could create a bigger pie. Exactly. Well, look, all leading in with this, of course, is, extraordinary. Keir Starmer's bid for a German trade deal and a EU reset. Look, We know he's got form on this, and I do want to hear from you on this. This is what I most want to hear from you today, but there's everything else. Call in on anything you want to talk about. You just as much want to hear from you. But Keir Starmer says it's time to turn a corner on Brexit and reset Britain's relationship with the EU. I just want to know what your reaction is to that. Already got lots of messages online on this. But give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Send a WhatsApp to the same number. You can text on 87222. You can get in touch on X at TalkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. You can leave a message on YouTube as well, all for free. But I mean, when the turning a corner on Brexit from a man who was shadow Brexit secretary, he not only campaigned against having Brexit in the first place up to 2016, as he's totally entitled to do. We had a referendum to have that decision, but then spent 2016 to 2019 trying to stop Brexit from being enacted, trying to have a second referendum to overturn the first without it being enacted, which means he's not a Democrat, by the way, to undermine the will of 17.4 million people, 52% of the voting population back in 2019. And he's only given up on that because basically that idea is dead in the water. Do you think he's this idea of a deal with, yes, we should have better relations with Germany and France, yes, we should have better trade with them, but that's kind of up to them. They wanted to punish us for leaving the EU. So, you know, it's not a problem that the British created.
If you really wanted a better trading relationship with Europe, the parts of Europe that are actually going to make money and grow in the next few years, you wouldn't go to Germany. You'd go to Poland, you go to Eastern Europe, because actually that's where a lot of the growth is. I was out last night with a couple of chaps who work for a very large...
the McDonald's.
Yes, for a very large Czech conglomerate, and they were saying how actually they're not really interested in investing in Britain at the moment. They've gone shopping in Germany recently because the economy is on its knees there and they're having a whale of a time, but Britain is even further down the pecking order. And so the idea, therefore, that the British Prime Minister would go, Germany, that's the priority. That shows you that they're a good 10 years behind the rest of even Europe.
The German economy is on the brink of collapse because of their absurd energy policy, where they've gone no nuclear. The old nuclear power plants that you have, they have literally recently blown up their last remaining working nuclear power plant. Their whole thing was, we don't do nuclear, we only do renewables, and now a massive load of coal, which is insane. Energy prices off the scale. German industry basically saying, car manufacturers saying, we're going to have to leave the country because we're not going to be able to function. But their whole thing was, we don't do nuclear, and then they imported all their electricity from France. How does France create electricity? Nuclear power. I mean, it's a complete joke of a country now. The idea that this is the powerhouse of Europe, it's not the powerhouse of Europe anymore.
It's not, and the living standards are going to start going down in Germany very soon, and you're already seeing the rise of an actual far-right party in Germany, because people are beginning to wake up to the reality that it's not actually, things are not quite as good.
Massive welfare costs for the huge number of migrants they took. 2015, the Syrians.
Hugely. Now they're also trying to find ways of repatriating lots of these people, when it turns out that tens of thousands of them actually, take holidays in the homes that they fled because of persecution every year. This has come as a major shock to German society to discover that people might be taking them for a ride. But you only need to look at Germany's attitude, A, towards Russia, but B, also towards doing business with China, because it has got itself into a state where it is heavily reliant also on Russian hydrocarbons and Chinese, effectively, wage slave labour, and in the case of Xinjiang, actual slave labour, to keep some of its companies going. This is not the country that you want to be going to and saying, yes, everything's going to be fantastic. You want to go to Warsaw, you want to maybe go to Hungary, maybe you want to go to Bratislava.
We want to be dealing with all the emerging economies in many of the parts of the world, the Asian economies that are thriving, and this Trans-Pacific Partnership that we're in.
I mean, the difficulty with that is it's China. No, it's all China. China's not in it. Well, this is part of the problem, is that this is the whole idea of the Belt and Road, is that China is not in it, but it depends on China to exist. So ultimately, if you're doing business in Vietnam or wherever it is,
we depend on China to exist.
Of course,
our entire economy will collapse.
The idea that we can decouple from China in the short term is a fantasy, because we've allowed ourselves.
Let's not go down the route. That's a whole other hour. Just say in about 25 minutes, Keir Starmer and the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz couldn't pick that man out in a lineup, really couldn't. We'll be holding a press conference in Berlin. It's at 10:45 our time, as the PM tries to turn a corner on Brexit. And once again, because I like you, we will not be playing that live. I know a lot of the broadcasters do, but I just think these things are interminable, and they really are not very enlightening.
Unless he comes back with a piece of paper saying, I've got peace in our time, it's not really interesting.
But fundamentally, Keir Starmer and pretty much everybody at the top echelons of the Labour Party think that the worst thing to have ever happened to this country history was the vote for Brexit. And then even worse, than actually enacting Brexit, because, my God, you don't do what the British people have said. It is extraordinary, that. Further down the road, COVID, just putting everyone, millions of people on furlough, paying an absolute fortune for people to sit at home for years who weren't at risk from COVID in any serious way. Yeah, that was definitely, and then Ukraine. And again, one of the reasons why we've been hit so hard by Ukraine and the energy price hike is because, like so many other countries in the rest of Europe, we have not had a sensible energy policy. We've not been fracking. We've not been investing more in North Sea oil and gas reserves. And we haven't got nuclear power stations and gas storage stations and things coming out of reasons we should do. So, if they're worried about the economy, what we need to do about it, the solution is not Germany or trying to turn back Brexit. The solution is some sensible policies. And by the way, the Tories have been just as bad on this.
Oh, they have. And energy policy is the first one, ultimately. We have it within our power to be almost energy self-sufficient, frankly. We've chosen not to do that. We're going down a completely mad route. But it is, again, very telling when we're talking about, Keir Starmer has just said the economy is in a dreadful state and even worse than we thought. And the first thing that people start to talk about is Brexit. Oh, Brexit. Yeah. It's not. Brexit has been neither a massive success nor a massive failure. It's actually been a bit of a bump in the road. The big thing we all know is COVID. We all know that it's COVID, but lots of people won't say it.
It's not. It's different. People say the COVID, the disease didn't cause the complete chaos. Lots of other countries have not had the same economic hit because they didn't have the lockdowns. But
you know what I mean, though, when I say
I do. I know. But we need to be very clearer than that, because that's the thing. But we need to be clear about that. Just one other thing on that line. It's emerged today with the winter fuel allowance, which is the Act of Parliament is going to be rushed through, and that means that this winter millions of pensioners are not going to be eligible to get their winter fuel payment. But a few hundred thousand tens of thousands, apologies, misread that, British pensioners will be able to keep their winter fuel allowance for one extra year. Why? Because they live in the EU, because they're expats. Imagine, this is under EU law, okay? This is the bizarre thing. So you've moved to Spain or Italy or somewhere to have your lovely winters in the warmth and not in the freezing cold of, of Leeds or wherever. And
what's wrong with Leeds?
That's wrong with Leeds, but,
It's dirty, but what's wrong with Leeds?
We're all cold in the winter. And there you are, and you're getting your £300 a year winter fuel allowance, but someone who's actually genuinely worried about putting the radiators on doesn't get it. This is everything that I hate about the EU.
That it doesn't always make sense, that there are sort of blanket responses to things, that things are desperately out of step with reality. Yeah, but, we need better trading relations with them, don't we? It's essential.
But that's up to them.
Yeah, well.
If they want to punish us for leaving under a democratic vote, then so be it. We will make our trades elsewhere. It's as simple as... They want to make us queue up for our passports and the fingerprinting. That's entirely up to them, and we can choose where we go on holiday. I'm sorry, I'm willing to take the hit on that. But if they want to cut off their own noses to spite their face by doing less trade with us, given that we're one of the biggest trading partners for the EU, with Germany's biggest trading partner, they're our second biggest. That's up to them, but they're only hurting themselves.
I just don't understand what the obsession is actually with it. You see it for what it really is. All of the sort of pretense that it was about a community of nations, all that, goes out the window the second we leave. And people still cling to the idea that if only we went back in, everything would be fine. As if things were fine before we had the referendum. That just spontaneously happened out of nowhere. Everybody was sort of skipping down the road. There were no financial issues.
I think you'll find we were all lied to by a big red bus.
And the Russians.
And the Russians.
Which is also how the Germans got rid of their nuclear power. But let's not talk about that. The only case of Russian interference that can be proven is Germany's literal entire nuclear...
I want to hear from you on this, because it's really... it's just so infuriating. I don't trust Keir Starmer as far as I could throw his tub of Brill cream. I really, really don't. The man will take... let's face it, it's a big tub. I'm going to have to be shot putting that thing. That's just a day's supply. But honestly, does he travel with just hand luggage when he goes to Germany? Because surely you can't get that in his hand luggage in a Ryanair flight.
It makes sense now why he needs a billionaire funding him, or a multi-millionaire funding him to have all of that Brill cream.
Yeah, exactly.
He
wasn't. He was not just funding his suits, his glasses, he was funding the hair supplies. But this is the thing, I don't trust him as far as I can throw him, or his Brill cream, when it comes to Brexit. He's going to try and bring us back into the EU by hook or by crook. I don't know how if they're in power for 5 long years, what can they do? Look,